All right, guys, sit back, relax, buckle up, sip some lemonade, jack off, whatever you got to do. We got a wild show today. We got a wild show. So I'm going to lead in just a second with what we know about the attempted attack on Trump again. I don't think it got very far. I'll break that down up front. Then after that, we have J.D. Vance goes to war with my wife. He picked a fight with my wife. Bad idea, dude. Bad idea, you pudgy-ass Pillsbury Doughboy bitch. A lot to say about that. Then we'll get to J.D. Vance collapsed so thoroughly that one of the worst CNN hosts was able to effortlessly dismantle his lies to his face. We'll talk about that. Trump says something shocking even for him, a new low even for him. He goes full fascist on the issue of the legal Haitian migrants that are here. And then later on, oh yeah, we're going to dive into the Laura Loomer relationship stuff. We're going to talk about Trump's colossal meltdown over Taylor Swift, some new polls that are brutal for the right, and Bill Maher is officially making an election prediction, and I think you'll be interested in that. So we have all that and more. Everybody do me a big favor. Please subscribe to the channel. Helps out massively, costs you nothing. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. And let me start by talking about the attempted Trump attack, number 2 in about 9 weeks. Okay, so what happened? Well, here are the basic facts. Donald Trump, in the middle of his day, decided, you know what, let's go play golf. He had, other things on the schedule, or he wasn't really supposed to be golfing, but he decided, let's go play a quick round of golf. He was in Florida at one of his golf courses in West Palm Beach. He had played a few holes. I believe he was on the 4th or 5th hole, and the Secret Service was clearing the holes in front of him. They're doing their regular, security perimeter check, and he was about to go to a hole which was along the fence line. And the Secret Service saw, hey man, there's a dude in the bushes with a fully automatic weapon and a GoPro and a backpack, kind of sketchy. And so what happened from there is actually pretty straightforward. We actually don't know all the details about the moment that the interaction happened, but I think the general understanding that people are running with now is that there were some shots fired, but it was actually not from the guy who was attempting to assassinate Trump, that the shots were fired by Secret Service, and this guy dropped his weapon, ran, I think tried to hop in like a getaway car, and you had drones flying overhead. They were able to track him, I believe, to I-95, and then they were able to arrest him there. Okay, so as far as assassination attempts go, we got to keep it real here. This was not remotely as close as the one in Butler, Pennsylvania, where, we all saw what unfolded there. This guy was on step 1 of 10 steps, and it was nipped in the bud because the Secret Service did their job properly. They did their job correctly. They were clearing the holes in front, and that was that. They were able to handle the situation up front. So it's honestly not nearly as explosive a story, one might say, as the last time where we were literally millimeters or inches away from a very different timeline. Allegedly, Trump said, hey, let me finish this hole because I have a chance at a birdie. That's what he said. I forget whether he was on the 4th or the 5th hole, but he was on one of those holes, and he was like, let me finish. I want to make a birdie. And they were like, no, we got to go. So that's what we know about the facts on the ground, the moment of. What's, I think, intriguing to people and interesting to people is, well, how did this guy know that Trump was going to be on the golf course? Because this was like a last-minute decision from Trump. So either he's got, a mole in the administration, or maybe he's lucky and he was just showing up to that golf course all the time and just waiting, knowing Trump will eventually play a round of golf at his West Palm Beach golf course. I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll find out with time, but as you're about to see, I'm going to give you the facts on this guy. It seems highly, highly unlikely that, he was some top-level assassin who had infiltrated the Trump campaign and was, this wasn't a very highfalutin effort. This was like a rough, a rough shot attempt of, I don't know, I'll try to take him out, right? So the guy's name is Ryan Ruth. Let me give you his background here. I know everybody's waiting to hear the political facts on him. Here's what we know. He's a registered unaffiliated voter. For those of you who don't know, unaffiliated is the equivalent of what an independent voter is in many states. The reason why some states have what's called unaffiliated is because there's other like independent or independence parties that are actual third parties. So some states describe an independent voter, as you would understand it, as an unaffiliated voter. So he's registered unaffiliated. Get this, guys. He voted for Trump in 2016. Voted for Trump in 2016. Now, from there on, he just hit you with a whole bunch of stuff out of left field. Just like trying to piece this together is like trying to do a high-level math equation when you don't have a math brain. Listen to this. He supported Tulsi Gabbard in 2019. Big Tulsi fan. He supported Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley on the same ticket after that. He has a post about how he wants to see that be the president and the vice president, Vivek Ramaswamy and Nikki Haley. Now, in terms of specific issues, he is massively pro-Ukraine to the point where he even went there and I believe tried to partake in some combat activities, although he ran into some brick walls because he has no combat experience and was a very weird guy and everybody could sort of see that who was close to him. He's massively pro-Taiwan, has a lot of tweets about that. He's an anti-vaccine COVID conspiracy theorist, right? So you're already mixing and matching from different worlds here. Usually the massively pro-Ukraine people are not the anti-vaccine people. It's usually the massively pro-Russia people are the anti-vaccine people. But no, he's mixing and matching all sorts of stuff here. He was pro the Iran nuclear deal and turned on Trump when Trump pulled out of it. He was massively anti-homelessness, and he was going to run. He lived in Hawaii. He was going to run for mayor somewhere in Hawaii, and he apparently had built some small structures for homeless folks, and this was a big issue to him. He had said that, look, if you go to like a dog shelter, our dogs in this country have better accommodations than many people who are out there sleeping on the streets. These are things that he said. He also has multiple criminal convictions. He has convictions for stealing, for a hit and run, for carrying a concealed weapon, resisting an officer, and carrying what they call a weapon of mass destruction in 2002. To be clear, that is not, it's not like he was walking around with a nuclear weapon. What they mean is like a fully automatic weapon. He had a fully automatic weapon, and that's described as a weapon of mass destruction. He was pulled over with a revoked license and apparently had his hand on his fully automatic machine gun and then tried to get away from the cops, drove to a store, and barricaded himself in the store. Okay, so this guy has a long rap sheet and a lot of issues. My guess is he's sort of like an unhinged bipolar person or potentially even as far as paranoid schizophrenic, and clearly he just shouldn't be legally allowed to own a gun. So there's also tweets he has of him asking Elon Musk for a rocket so he can personally kill Putin. He also tweeted at Elton John and Dave Matthews Band and asked them to make a song for Ukraine to rally support. One very bizarre fact is that in 1991, there was this very positive story written about him in a newspaper because he saved a woman from being raped and like was able to identify her attacker. So at least in 1991 at the time, he was viewed as sort of a hero. And it was after that that you had all these other crimes that he committed. There are a lot of people who are around him who were kind of like, yeah, weird dude. I believe his kids had, positive things to say, like, oh my God, I can't believe he would have done this. He's a nice guy, etc. But there were others who are like, no, that dude is really, he's kind of off. So Elon suspended his account. We're all speculating right now as to why that is. But from my perspective, I think it's reasonable to assume the reason he suspended the account is because people were going through all of his tweets. And it wasn't a clean and direct and straightforward narrative. This wasn't some like hardcore leftist who was tweeting hardcore lefty things all the time. This is a guy who had an absolutely absurd mishmash of different political beliefs, and it doesn't really fit the narrative. And so he says, all right, let's just ban it and have people stop digging. Elon, by the way, also tweeted after this attempted attack on Trump, and people were furious about this. He was like, well, nobody's even tried to assassinate Kamala and Joe Biden. Oh my God. it read sort of like an implied threat, almost like why? Why is that not happening? Maybe we should even the scoreboard. That's how it read. And everybody in the replies was shitting on him. And it was so extreme that even Elon Musk deleted that tweet and was basically trying to cover his own ass and potentially try to stop from getting deported or losing his government contracts to the tune of multi-billions of dollars, right? Because it was sort of like a threat. And that's something that could get you investigated. So, anyway, he ended up pulling it down and doing some like weird mea culpa tweets where he's like, "Oh, I was joking." Now, here's what's going to happen from here. Let me break this down for you. Here's what's going to happen from here. You ready? I'll tell you. I'll give you what the next 3 days are going to look like. If not, these things are probably already happening. The neocons, people like Ben Shapiro, and you know the typical neocon politicians or government staffers, the John Boltons, etc. They are going to focus on the Iran part of this guy's story. In fact, they might imply or outright say, hey, maybe he was an agent of the Iranian government. Now, they're going to try to do that to whip up fears and try to get us into war with Iran, right? That's what the neocons are going to do. They're going to hyper-focus on the Iran portion of how this guy supported the Iran nuclear agreement and he turned on Trump when Trump pulled out of it. I think he also said we should apologize to Iran or something to that effect. That's what they'll hyper-focus on, and they will imply, if not outright say, hey, maybe we need to, investigate his connections to Iran and take it from there. Okay. Then you're going to have the fake anti-war types are going to focus on the Ukraine portion, and they're going to play that up and try to hide everything else about his politics and say, oh, it's all about Ukraine, it's all about Ukraine, it's all about Ukraine. Oh, would you look at this? Isn't it, the biggest sin in the world to support Ukraine, and isn't it pro-war to support Ukraine, and oh, poor Russia. This is what we're going to see from the fake anti-war types. They're going to harp away on the Ukraine portion of it, right? Outside of that, the right more generally will call him a leftist nonstop. Leftist. They'll say he's a Biden supporter and a Kamala supporter and a Democrat and a lefty and a lefty and a lefty and a lefty and a lefty. This is what they're going to say. I'm already starting to see some of that. Mike Huckabee was focusing on certain parts of his belief system. It's, see, very clean narrative. Everybody cut it off here. But here's the other thing I'm going to predict. In a grand total of 3 days' time, 1, 2, 3, it will be nearly impossible to get people to care about this story. Look, you got to keep it real. The Trump assassination attempt in Butler, that was in the news very strongly for maybe a week, maybe two. And then after that, I mean, honestly, the news cycle moves so fast. People are so busy. There's so much shit that goes on in our political world that you literally have pro-Trump accounts and Trump himself tweeting out videos of it to remind people, hey, this happened. Remember that this happened. And so if a much worse assassination attempt that got a lot closer to working, if that was in and out of the public consciousness in a week or two, this one, which didn't even get to the point where homie fired a shot. Again, the general understanding right now as I talk to you is that if there was a shot or two fired, it was literally the Secret Service at the dude who then dropped his gun and ran away, right? So it wasn't really close to working. And it was much less salacious than the previous attempt, which almost worked. And my guess is in 3 days, nobody will even be thinking about it. In terms of whether or not Trump will get a bump in the polls, I know it's crass to talk about it from this perspective, but nonetheless, we have to. This is my job. I don't think he's going to get much of a bump because the last time he didn't get much of a bump. Trump saw a personal favorability rating bump of 7 points. But number one, that went away. And number two, he didn't see a bump in terms of people who are actually going to vote for him. When Ronald Reagan got shot at, he had a bump of 22 points of people that are actually going to fucking vote for him, right? Didn't see it with Trump. People's opinions on Trump are ironclad. They are set in stone. And so my guess is what's going to happen here is 3 days, done, and that's the story. And honestly, the main takeaway here is the Secret Service did their job, and they did their job really, really, really well. And in terms of solutions, I mean, it's fucking obvious. A guy with 8 criminal convictions who's clearly either severely bipolar or paranoid schizophrenic, that dude should have never been anywhere near able to legally get a weapon. That's the takeaway. The takeaway is we have a country that has a decent number of severely mentally ill people, and those mentally ill people have easy access to weapons, and then in many instances they take it and they go do a mass shooting at a school, or they take it and they try to go after some politician, right? That's the takeaway. This dude should have never been legally able to get a gun. And if you say, well, oh, he would just get it on the black market and this and that, even if I grant you that, the numbers in the aggregate would come down colossally. Instead of having 32,000 gun deaths every single year, if you made it so people like this couldn't get guns, maybe that number gets cut in half. Maybe it gets cut in more than half. Maybe we go from 32,000 gun deaths a year to 4,000 gun deaths a year, and that's a lot of fucking lives saved, isn't it? And it doesn't infringe in any way, shape, or form on law-abiding citizens' ability to own a gun. So that's the big takeaway, but of course, that's going to be obfuscated massively. And so, again, to reiterate, the neocons are going to focus on the Iran part and imply, if not outright say, he's an agent of the Iranian government. The fake anti-war types are going to harp away on the Ukraine angle and ignore all the other parts of his political philosophy. And the right is more generally going to claim he's a leftist nonstop. It's going to 3 days in and out, and people won't even be talking about it anymore. And the parts that will be buried that you won't hear much about are all the parts that confuse the narrative humpers. All the parts that they're going to lie by omission and not tell you about. Registered unaffiliated, voted Trump in 2016, supported Tulsi in 2019, supported Vivek and Nikki Haley on the same ticket after that. And then everything else that's contradictory. Pro-Ukraine, pro-Taiwan, anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist. Like, it's a mix of all sorts of wild stuff. But yeah, you should have never been able to get a gun. I think that's the general takeaway. And there you have it. I guess we'll learn more as time goes by, but even when we learn more, I got to be honest, I think most people are going to be like, well, yeah, we already saw this episode. And the other episode had more drama in it. The other episode was more suspenseful. So, I don't know. What do you want me to say? That's what's going to happen. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.